Her ears snapped upright, tail bristling as howls rolled through the forest. Golden eyes locked on him wide with fear. "Lucan, they found me." She thought her people would tear them apart. But instead, she chose him forever. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. The cabin was no longer silent. It was filled with warmth, laughter, and the soft purr of a fox girl who had chosen to stay. Nara stole his food, teased his patience, curled against him at night as though she had always belonged. But peace is a fragile thing. For weeks, her ears had twitched at sounds he couldn't hear, her nose catching scents that stirred unease. Now the truth lingered at the edge of the tree-in. Her people were out there, and where Nara found love, they would see betrayal. Life in the cabin had become unrecognizable from the silent days before Nara. Lucen woke most mornings with a tail across his chest and fur tickling his chin. Nara would pretend she hadn't been clinging to him all night, though her claws often left little snags in his shirt. When he teased her about it, she muttered excuses like, "Blank moves wrong," or "Protect her too warm." He only laughed, tugging her close until her ears went pink. The cabin, once tidy and sparse, now bore signs of her mischief. Flowers still dusted the shelves from her inspection. Paw prints of mud dotted the floor after her rambles through the woods, and the blanket she claimed as hers was always in the middle of the room. Lucan should have been annoyed, but he found himself smiling at the chaos. One morning, he caught her crouched on the counter again, tails swishing as she peered into the spice jars. "Don't tell me you think the thyme is poison too," Lucan said, leaning on the doorway. Nara's ears twitched guilty. "Smells sharp. Suspicious. It's supposed to," he replied, walking over to pluck the jar from her claws. "That's why it makes stew taste like something instead of nothing." She wrinkled her nose, tail flicking. "Still strange. Strange doesn't mean bad." He dipped a pinch onto her tongue before she could protest. Her eyes widened, ears flicking rapidly. Strange, but good," Lucan smirked. "See, you can trust me." Nara gave him a sly grin, licking the last of the spice from her lips. "Protector could feed me poison, and I would still eat. Good thing I'm not the type to waste good poison on someone who steals half my dinner." She laughed, tail batting him in mock offense. The days passed in a rhythm of work and play. Nara followed him out to the fence lines, insisting she could carry twice the logs he did, only to trip and send bark tumbling everywhere. Lucan hauled her up easily, brushing sawdust from her hair while she sputtered and insisted she'd meant to fall. When he fished in the stream, she crouched at the bank, eyes locked on the rippling water. Her tail twitched as if ready to pounce. Once she lunged at a darting fish, splashing into the water head first. She emerged soaked and triumphant, holding the wriggling catch aloft. "See, faster than net." Lucan chuckled, shaking his head. "You're going to drown one of these days trying to prove me wrong." Nara flicked water at him with her tail, golden eyes glowing with mischief. "Protector will save me every time," he said simply. The words slipped out like fact, and for once, Nara didn't tease. She only smiled, small and shy, before turning back to her fish. Yet, despite the warmth of their days, Lucan began to notice her unease. At night, Nara often froze mid-laugh, ears snapping toward the trees as though listening to voices he couldn't hear. Sometimes she sniffed the air, tail stiff before shaking her head quickly as if trying to dismiss it. When he asked what was wrong, she shrugged it off. "Forest smells busy. Nothing more." But her eyes lingered on the tree lean longer than before. One evening, as the two sat by the fire, Lucan, resting with his hand on her tail, Nara grew uncharacteristically quiet. "What's on your mind?" he asked softly. Her ears lowered. "If my people come," Lucan straightened. "You think they're close?" Nara's claws tapped nervously on the blanket. "They wander. They scent things. If they find me here, find me with you. They will not understand." Lucan reached out, brushing her cheek with steady fingers. "Then let them come. I'll deal with it." Her golden eyes searched his face, fear and hope wearing in them. "You protect against storms, against men, but my people," she trailed off, voice shaking. "They hate humans." Lucan's hand cooped her chin, firm but gentle. "Then they'll have to hate me. Doesn't change what we have." Nara's lips parted, breath trembling. For a long moment, she stared at him as though trying to memorize his face. Then, with sudden determination, she curled against him, tail wrapping around his waist. "You stubborn?" she whispered. Lucan smiled, kissing the top of her head. Takes one to love one. Her purr rumbled, soft but fierce as the fire crackled around them. Outside, beyond the cabin walls, the forest stretched wide and silent. But Nara's ears never stopped twitching, catching sounds Lucan couldn't. And though she nestled closer than ever, her tail tight around him, her eyes stayed weary on the shadows. Something was coming. The first halt came on a night when the stew was nearly ready. Lucan had just set bowls on the table when Nara froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. Her ears snapped upright, tail stiff as a spear. "What is it?" he asked, hand drifting instinctively toward the knife at his belt. Nara's golden eyes went wide, focused on something far away. Then the sound rolled over the hills, a long, mournful cry, deep and resonant. Not wolf, not any beast Lucan knew. Nara's bull clattered back to the table untouched. "Them," she whispered. Lucan's grip tightened on the knife. "Your people." Her ears twitched, lowering with fear. "Yes, close." The hull came again, this time answered by another, higher and sharper. Nara flinched. "They search." Lucan's eyes flicked to the door, to the dark beyond. "For you?" Nara nodded, tail curling tight around her legs. Her voice cracked. "If they send me here, if they see me with you, they'll take me." The stew went cold that night. Nara paced the cabin like a caged thing, claws clicking on the floor, ears twitching at every sound. She muttered under her breath in her own tongue, too quick for Lucan to catch. Every so often, she'd stop and press her face against the shutters, nostrils flaring. Lucan sat at the table, watching her with steady calm. He didn't try to stop her, but his presence was an anchor. "You're not a prisoner here," he said finally. "If you want to leave, no." The word burst out too quickly. She stopped, ears flattening, tail lashing. I don't want she faltered, claws flexing. "I don't want them to hurt you." Lucan leaned back in his chair, a faint smile tugging his lips. "Nara, I've handled worse than howls in the dark. Not like them." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They hate humans. They'll see me with you and say I betrayed them." Lucan rose, crossing the room with slow, deliberate steps. She froze, eyes flicking up to meet his. He set his hands gently on her shoulders, grounding her trembling form. "You didn't betray anyone," he said firmly. "You chose." "That's different," Nara swallowed, golden eyes glimmering with uncertainty. "They won't see it that way. Then they'll have to see it my way." The howls came again 2 nights later, closer now. Nara wouldn't sit still. She crouched by the fire, tail twitching, chewing on stolen pieces of bread without tasting them. Every creak of the cabin made her ears jump. Lucan tried to keep the mood steady, stirring the stew, cracking dry jokes. "If they want to fight, they'll have to wait until after dinner. Priorities." Na shot him a look, ears twitching despite her tension. "You joke too much." "Better than pacing holes in the floor," he countered. Her tail lashed. "I can't be calm. Not when I hear them." Lucan set the ladle down and sat beside her, shoulder brushing hers. "Then let me be calm for both of us." Nara blinked, startled by the softness in his voice. Slowly, her tail coiled around his arm, gripping tight. "Protect her." He rested his hand over hers. "Always." But her fear ran deeper than he realized. One evening, when the house echoed especially close, Nara began gathering things in frantic haste. Her blanket, scraps of food, even the ladle. Lucan turned from the fire, startled. "What are you doing?" "Leaving?" Her voice shook, ears pinned. "If they find me here, they'll hurt you." "I can't." Lucan strode over, catching her wrist mid-motion. She flinched but didn't pull away, eyes wide. "Nara, stop." His voice was steady, calm, but firm. "You think I'd let you run off into the dark? Alone?" Her lip trembled. "Better me alone than you dead." Lucan's grip softened, but he didn't let go. "Listen to me. I'm not afraid of them. And I'm not letting you go just because you're afraid for me." Tears glimmered at the edges of her eyes, her ears trembling. "Why?" "Because you're mine as much as I'm yours." Her breath caught, tail twitching violently. She swallowed, the words sticking in her throat, but the way she leaned into him said enough. That night, she stayed close, closer than ever. Every thunderclap of a howl outside sent her pressing into his chest, her claws curling into his shirt, her purr breaking through the fear. Lucan held her steady, murmuring reassurances into her hair until she finally drifted to sleep against him. But as he listened to the forest beyond, the distant voices growing bolder, Lucin knew the quiet days were ending. Her people were coming, and when they arrived, they would see the fox girl not as his partner, but as their own, and they would try to take her away. The morning mist clung heavy to the trees. Lucan was repairing the chicken pen when this sharp intake of breath made him freeze. She crouched low, tail puffed, eyes locked on the tree. Hers is quivered, honing in on something unseen. Lucan followed her gaze. At first, he saw nothing, just mist curling around pines. Then, a shape flickered between the trunks. Low, swift, too deliberate to be an animal. A vulpine. Even at a distance, the outline was clear. The ears, the crouch frame, the way the figure paused, nose lifted to catch the wind. Nara's claws dug furrows in the dirt. "Scout," she whispered. Lucan's grip tightened on the hammer in his hand. "They found us." Nara spun to him, panic flashing in her golden eyes. "We must leave now. If more come, if they send you, I'm not running from a shadow in the trees." Lucan cut in steady, her ears flattened, her tail lashing wildly. "You don't understand. They will kill you and leave you to what? Drag you back to a life you don't want." Her breath caught, trembling. "Better me than you." Lucan dropped the hammer, closing the space between them in 2 strides. He caught her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Don't you dare say that. Not after everything we've built here." Nara's ears quivered, torn between fear and defiance. Her claws hovered uncertainly over his chest, not pushing him away, but not pulling him close either. "I can't watch them hurt you." Lucan's voice softened, but his grip stayed firm. "And I can't let you walk away because of fear. We faced this together." Her tail lashed once, then stilled. Her lips trembled as though 100 protests fought to escape, but instead she sagged forward, pressing her forehead into his chest. "Protector," she whispered, purring despite her fear. "Stupid protector." Lucin allowed a small smile, resting his chin atop her hair. "Better a stupid protector than a coward who lets you go." For days, the forest felt alive with unseen eyes. Nara grew restless, her nose twitching, ears flicking towards sounds Lucan couldn't hear. She paced the cabin at night, muttering under her breath, tail coiling tight with unease. Lucan tried to lighten the air. He cooked her favorite stew, teased her when she sniffed it impatiently. "Careful," he said, handing her a bowl. "If my food keeps you from bolting, maybe I should keep the pot chained down." Nara gave him a sharp look, but her tail betrayed her amusement, swishing once. "You bribe me." "Exactly. Works every time," she huffed, sipping the stew. "Maybe I stay only for food." "Then I'd better keep the pot full," Lucan said with a wink. Her ears flicked, and though her smile was small, it was real. But the tension remained. One evening, as Lucan whittled led by the fire, Nara suddenly crouched at the window, nose pressed against the shutter. Her body went taut, tail bristling. "What is it?" Lucan asked, knife luring. Her voice came low, urgent. "He's back, watching." Lucan rose, moving to her side. Through the crack in the shutter, he caught a flash of movement, eyes glinting faintly in the dusk before vanishing into shadow. Nara's claws dug grooves into the wood. "He knows he will bring others." Lucan's jaw tightened. "Then let them come." Nara spun on him, snarling, fear spilling into anger. "You don't get it. They will tear this place apart. You will die for nothing." "Nothing?" Lucan's voice sharpened, cutting through the fire's crackle. He stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. "Is what we have here nothing to you?" Her breath hitched, ears low, tail curling tight. She whispered, "It's everything. That's why I can't." Her voice cracked. "If they see me here, they'll think I betrayed them. If they see me with you, they'll kill us both." Lucan caught her chin, forcing her trembling gaze to meet his. "Then let them see. Let them hate me if they want. I'm not letting them take you." Na stared at him, golden eyes wide, pupils trembling. Slowly, her resistance broke. Her tail unfurled, curling around his arm, pulling him closer. "You are stubborn," she whispered again, voice thick. Lucan's smile was faint but certain. "And you're mine." Her lips parted, breath shaky. Mischief flickered briefly through her fear. "Then you carry me if we run." He chuckled. "You'd claw my back the whole way." Her ears perked, a small laugh breaking through her panic. Maybe. That night, she refused to let him sleep alone. She curled against him tighter than ever, claws lightly hooked into his shirt as though anchoring herself. Lucan stayed awake long after her purse settled into soft breaths, staring into the fire. He knew she was right about one thing. The scout would return, and he wouldn't come alone. And when her people arrived, it wouldn't just be Nara's trust tested. It would be his. The forest was too quiet the morning they came. Lucan felt it first, not in sound, but in the weight of the air. No birds, no insects, no wind, just stillness. He set his axe down slowly, eyes narrowing at the tree-line. Nero was already tense, crouched on the porch, tail bristled, ears forward, her nose twitched rapidly. They're here. Lucan didn't reach for his weapon right away. He knew better than to brandish steel at unseen eyes. Instead, he stood tall, arms loose at his sides, his presence steady as a stone. Shapes emerged from the shadows, 4 of them. Vulpine figures, lean and sharp, with tails swaying low in suspicion. Their fur was strewn with dirt and ash, their clothes ragged, but marked with bones and beads of their kin. At their head was an older male, foregone gray at the tips, a jagged scar running from brow to muzzle. His golden eyes glared at Lucan before flicking to Nara. Nara stiffened as if struck. "Father," she whispered. Lucan's stomach clenched, but his expression didn't waver. The older Vulpine's lip curled. "Nara, living with a human?" He spat the last word like poison. "Have you fallen so low?" Nara's ears flattened, tail curling tight around her legs. "It's not like that, then. What is it like?" Another voice cut in. A younger female, sharp-eyed, tail lashing. "You hide in his den, eat his food, wear his smell. You shame us all." Nara's claws flexed, her voice trembling. "He saved me." "Saved you?" Her father snarled. "He caged you." His gaze snapped to Lucan. "What spell did you cast, human? What lies did you feed her?" Lucan took a slow step forward, calm but firm. "No lies, no cage. She chose to stay." The younger female scoffed, teeth flashing. "Shows. Her mind's poisoned. She doesn't know what she says." Nara growled low, surprising even herself. "I know what I say. He is my protector, my home." The word struck like a spark on dry tinder. Her father's tail lashed violently. "Protect her from what?" "From the world he and his kind destroyed. Do you not remember what humans did to us?" Nara flinched, her ears trembling. But she didn't back down. "Not all humans." Her eyes darted to Lucan, then back. "Not him." The tension coiled tight, thicker than the silence of the forest. Lucan could feel every eye on him, weighing, judging. He didn't raise his voice, but his words carried firm. "She's not your prisoner, and she's not mine either. She stays because she wants to." "Lies," the younger female spat. "If she stays, it is because you made her weak or because he made me strong." Nara snapped back, surprising them all. Her tail swished high, defiant. Her father's glare hardened. "If you are truly strong, then prove it. Leave him. Come with us. Show you are still Vulpine." Nara froze torn. Her ears flicked back, tail curling tight, every muscle quivering. She looked at Lucan, fear shining in her eyes. Lucan met her gaze steadily, refusing to show the storm in his chest. He spoke low, meant only for her. "You don't have to prove anything. Not to them. Not to me. Only to yourself." Nara swallowed hard, her claws digging grooves into the wood of the porch. Her father's growl cut her off. "Choose Nara. Them or us." The silence stretched, taut as a bowstring. Nara's chest heaved, her breath ragged. Her eyes darted between her kin and Lucan torn in two. Her ears twitched toward the forest sounds of her people, the familiarity of their scent. But her tail coiled around Lucan's ankle, trembling. Her voice cracked. Lucan's hand brushed hers gently, grounding her. "Don't choose for me," he whispered. "Choose for you." Her eyes widened, golden irises shimmering. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. Then, with a trembling breath, she turned to her kin. "I choose him." Her father's roar split the silence. The others' bristled tails lashing teeth bared. Nara's ears pressed back, but her voice steadied. "He is my protector, my home. You cannot take me from him." The younger female spat, fury flashing. "Then he must prove it. Prove he's worth you, or we take you by force." Lucan's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, placing himself between Nara and her kin. "Then tell me what I have to do." The scarred father sneered. "We will see if your words are more than smoke." Human Nara clutched Lucan's arm, trembling. "Don't. They'll break you." Lucan squeezed her hand. "I've been broken before. I'll survive this too. Nara's purr rumbled low and desperate, her tail curling around him as if to hold him there, to keep him from being pulled away. But the challenge had been cast, and the forest watched. The clearing behind the cabin became their arena. Nara's kin fanned out in a half circle, tails low and eyes gleaming. The scarred elder, her father, stood at the center, his gaze locked on Lucan with unflinching contempt. You say she chose you, he growled. Then prove yourself worthy of that choice. Lucan crossed his arms, steady as ever. I'm listening. One of the younger males, lean and wiry, bared his teeth. Fight me. Show you can stand. Lucan shook his head. If this is about breaking bones, I've already played that game. I didn't build this home by spilling more blood. The elder's lip curled, but there was a glint of interest in his eyes. Not fight then. Endure. Hunt. Prove you are more than a soft creature hiding behind walls. Nara's claws dug into Lucan's sleeve. Don't. They will push until you fall. Lucan gave her a faint smile. I've fallen before. Always got back up. Her golden eyes shimmered with fear, but her tail curled tighter around his arm as though trying to anchor him in place. The first trial was a run through the woods. Outlast him. The wiry vulpine sneered, crouching low at the tree line. If you can keep up, Lucan rolled his shoulders calm. Lead the way. They sprinted into the underbrush. Roots clawed at Lucan's boots. Branches whipped across his arms, the ground uneven and merciless. The vulpine moved with liquid grace, darting between trees, their tails streaming like banners. But Lucan did not falter. His stride was steady, unhurried, each breath measured. Years of soldiers' marches of hauling wood and stone had carved endurance into his bones. By the time they returned to the clearing, the wiry vulpine was panting, chest heaving. Lusum came seconds later, breathing hard but steady. The elder's eyes narrowed. He gave a small nod, stubborn like a stone. Nara's tail thumped once, relief breaking through her fear. The second trial was tracking. A female vulpine tossed a strip of cloth into the trees. Find it before we do. Nara hissed low, ears flat. Unfair their noses. Lucan touched her shoulder. Don't worry. The hunters darted into the forest, sniffing, scanning the ground. Lucan moved slower, scanning the undergrowth with human eyes. He crouched, brushing his fingers over a broken stem, a footprint in the damp soil. His eyes caught threads where the cloth had snagged. He followed, step by deliberate step. By the time the vulpine pack returned empty-handed, Lucan emerged from the opposite side of the clearing, the cloth in his fist. Nara's breath caught, her tail curling around her knees in astonished pride. The younger vulpine hissed, glaring at him. The elder's gaze hardened. Luck experience, Lucan corrected. War teaches you to notice what others miss. The final trial was endurance of pain. The wiry male stepped forward, a branch in hand, his eyes gleaming cruel. Stand. Do not fall. Lucan stripped off his coat, tossing it aside. His body bore scars, old and new, lines of battles fought and survived. Nara gasped softly, golden eyes widening at the sight. The vulpine struck. Once, twice again. The branch cracked across Lucan's back, his shoulders, his chest. He staggered, but did not fall. His jaw clenched, teeth grit, but he stayed upright. Nara trembled, tail lashing violently. She hissed low, claws digging into the dirt. Every strike landed on Lucan as if on her own skin. Enough, she cried finally, voice breaking. She darted forward, shoving herself between them. Her tail wrapped protectively around Lucan, her claws bared. He's proved more than you ever asked. The clearing went still. The younger vulpine recoiled at her fury. Lucan stood behind her, chest heaving, blood dripping from a shallow cut at his brow. Yet he smiled faintly, pride shining through the pain. See, he rasped, still standing, narrow world, golden eyes wide with tears. Why? Why take this? Lucan's voice was steady even through the ache. Because you're worth it. Her father's glare wavered. He studied Lucan in silence for a long, heavy moment. Then slowly he spoke. You endure, but endurance is not enough. She must choose. Nara stiffened, ears trembling. The eyes of her kin bore into her, demanding loyalty, demanding proof. Her tail curled around Lucan's leg, trembling. Her heart pounded, torn in two. And Lucan, bloodied but steady, looked at her with nothing but calm. It's your choice, Nara. Not mine. Not theirs. Yours. The clearing was silent. but fair as ragged breath. Her kin ringed her like shadows, golden eyes blazing with accusation. Her father's voice came low, hard as stone. Choose them or us. Nara's claws dug into the earth, trembling. Her tail lashed once, then coiled around Lucan's leg as if refusing to let go. But her ears twitched toward the voices of her kin, the sense of her bloodline, memories she could not erase. Her voice cracked, breaking like glass. Lucan touched her shoulder gently. When she looked up, his eyes were steady, calm, even through the pain. You don't owe me this, he said softly, meant for her alone. If you need to go with them, I won't stop you. Her heart lurched. No, Nara, Lucan said firmly, though his thumb brushed her cheek with tenderness. I want you to stay, but not because you're afraid to leave. Stay only if you truly want this. If you truly want me. Tears pricked her golden eyes. She stared at him, at the man who had fed her when she was a thief, who had held her through storms, who had bled under the branch and still stood. A human who should have hated her and yet called her home. Her kin snarled impatient. She hesitates because she knows the truth, spat the younger female. Nara's ears flattened, her tail twitching violently. No, she said, voice low but growing. I hesitate because I am done being afraid. She rose, stepping forward, placing herself at Lucan's side. Her claws curled into his hand, lacing with his fingers. Her golden eyes burned as she faced her father. I choose him. The words rang like thunder. Her kin erupted in shouts and growls. The wiry male spat into the dirt. The younger female's teeth bared in fury. You shame us all. Banner's voice cut through them, fierce. He is my protector, my home, my mate. Lucan blinked, heart pounding. She had never said it aloud before. The word mate left no room for doubt, no room for hesitation. Nara's tail wrapped around him possessively, purring like a vow. Mine, she hissed, daring anyone to challenge her. Her father's snarl shook the clearing. Mate with a human. You defile your blood. Nara stepped forward, ears high, tail bristling with defiance. Better a human who stands, who bleeds, who protects, than kin who abandoned me to starve. The younger female recoiled, silenced by the strike of truth. Lucan squeezed her hand, his voice steady, but carrying. She doesn't belong to you. She doesn't belong to me. She belongs to herself, and she's chosen. Na's pure deepened, vibrating through her chest. She pressed against him, claws hooking his sleeve, her golden eyes shining with certainty. Yes, chosen. For a long moment, the clearing trembled with tension. Her kin shifted, snarled, bristled, but the elder's scarred eyes stayed on Lucan. He studied him in silence, the contempt flickering into something colder, harder to read. Finally, he growled low. So be it. But do not expect us to bless this shame. You are no daughter of mine. Nara flinched as though struck. Her ears fell, her tail tightening. For a heartbeat, her fierce defiance faltered. But Lucan's arms slipped around her waist steady. She doesn't need your blessing. She already has mine. Nara's breath hitched. Slowly, she lifted her chin, forcing her voice to steady even as tears shimmered. Then keep your name. I will make a new one with him. Her kin snarled, muttered, but none moved forward. The elder gave one final glare, then turned away. Come, he barked, and the others melted into the trees, their golden eyes burning from the shadows until they were gone. The forest went still again. Nara collapsed against Lucan, trembling. Her claws dug into his shirt, her purr breaking into sobs. Protector, protector. Lucan held her tight, burying his face into her hair. I'm here. I've got you. She looked up at him, tears streaking her cheeks, ears trembling. You would have let me go. Lucan brushed his thumb across her cheek. If that's what you needed, because loving you means giving you a choice. Her breath caught, her tail curling so tight around him it almost hurt. Then with a trembling laugh, she pressed her forehead to his. Stupid protector. Mine forever. Lucan smiled, kissing her softly, tenderly forever. That night, back in the cabin, Na refused to leave his side for even a moment. She followed him from fire to table to bed, her tail coiled around him constantly, her claws lightly hooked into his sleeve. When they laid down at last, she curled against him, her purr fierce and unbroken. They cannot take me, she whispered. Not now. Not ever. Lucan kissed the top of her head, holding her close. They'd have to kill me first. Nares deepened into a growl of satisfaction. Good. Then we fight together. and as she pressed into him, her wildness softened by certainty. Lucan knew they had crossed a threshold. No storm, no trial, no kin could undo. She had chosen, and she had chosen him. The forest swallowed the last echoes of Nara's kin. Their shapes melted into shadow, their eyes fading like dying embers among the trees. The stillness that followed was heavy, broken only by the crackle of wind through leaves. Lucan stood tall, blood still drying at his brow, every muscle taut in readiness. Only when the last hull drifted into the distance did he let out a slow breath. Nara clung to his arm, claws trembling, her tail coiled tight around his waist. Her golden eyes flicked to the empty Trian, then back to him as if making sure he was still there. "They're gone," Lucan murmured. "For now," she whispered back. Her ears twitched at every sound, still half, wild with tension. But when she turned toward him, her eyes softened, burning with something fiercer than fear. "You stay," she whispered. "I told you," he said with a faint smile, brushing her cheek. "Always." As they turned to leave the clearing, a shape lingered. The elder's mate, an older vulpine woman, her first silvered with age, stood at the Trian, watching. Her eyes were not filled with rage like the others. They were tired. Measuring, Nara stiffened. "Mother." The woman's ears tilted back, but her gaze rested on Lucan. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, finally, she spoke low, but clear enough for them both to hear. "He bleeds and still stands. That makes him more vulpine than most." Nara's breath caught. "You don't hate him?" The elder woman's tail twitched, unreadable. "I hate what was done to us, but I see what he is to you. That is enough." Her eyes softened just for a heartbeat. "Live well, daughter." Then she turned, vanishing into the forest without another word. Nara's claws dug into Lucan's arm, tears shimmering in her eyes. She did not reject me." Lucan squeezed her hand gently. "Sounds like you still have one ally out there." Nara buried her face into his chest, her purr breaking through her tears. "Protector, we're not alone." "No," Lucan agreed, holding her close. "Not anymore." Back at the cabin, Nara would not let him out of her sight. She fussed over every scratch, every bruise, her claws clumsy as she dabbed a wet cloth over his cuts. "You're worse than the storms," she muttered, ears trembling. Lucan chuckled, wincing as she pressed too hard. "You should see the storms I've lived through." Nara's golden eyes flashed, tail flicking indignantly. "Not funny. Wasn't meant to be," he admitted softly, her hands stilled, claws trembling. Slowly, she leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "I thought I would lose you." Lucan cooped her face steady and warm. "You never will." Later, when the fire burned low, she curled into his lap without asking, her tail wrapping around his body like a living chain. She looked up at him, her mischief dimmed, her eyes soft. "You're mine," she whispered. "Not stew, not blanket, not joke. You." Lucan's chest tightened. He stroked her hair gently, letting the truth of her words sink deep. "And you're mine." Nara's ears flicked pink, but she didn't hide. Instead, she pressed her lips to his fierce certain, no hesitation left. Her purr vibrated against his chest, filling the cabin with a sound as steady as the firelight. When they finally parted, she rested her head on his shoulder, whispering, "Mate, protector, home." Lucan held her close, smiling into her hair. All of it forever. That night they lay together in the quiet, her tail draped across his chest, her claws hooked lightly into his shirt as if anchoring him to her. For the first time since the house began, her ears lay relaxed, her breathing calm. Lucan closed his eyes, listening to her purr. It was no longer the sound of a frightened creature clinging to safety. It was the sound of a woman who had chosen, who had claimed, who had finally found peace. And as he drifted toward sleep, he realized the trials were not just for him. They had been for them both. Together they had endured. Together they had won. The days after the confrontation passed in a blur of quiet and warmth. Narration no longer looked to the Trian with fear. Her ears twitched still, her nose lifted often, but it was habit now, not dread. When the forest grew still, she pressed herself against Lucan's side, tail curling possessively, her purr humming like a steady promise. The cabin had always been Lucan's shelter. Now it was alive. Nara made her presence known in every corner. One morning, Lucan found her perched on the table, tearing strips of dried meat with her claws. "Breakfast," she announced smugly. Lucan eyed the mess of crumbs and claw marks scattered across the wood. That's one way to do it. Nara's ears flicked indignantly. Fast way. He leaned on the door frame, smirking. You just wanted to avoid cooking. Her tail swished, betraying her amusement. Protector cooks. I taste. Lucan chuckled, crossing the room to ruffle her hair. Then I suppose I'm stuck feeding you forever. Nara purred, leaning into his touch. Good. You mind? Chores became a comedy of mischief. When Lucan mended the roof, Nara insisted on climbing up to help. She scampered across the beams like a fox in the wild, ears perked, tail flicking for balance. But the moment she lost her footing and slipped, Lucan caught her mid-fall with one arm. See, he said, holding her against his chest as she scowled. This is why you're not allowed up here. Nara's ears burned pink. Was testing you. Lucan laughed. You test me every day? That night she curled against him by the fire, muttering into his shirt. Past always pass. She began leaving little marks of herself on everything. A claw scratched by the door frame. Her blanket draped across his chair. The smell of her fur clinging to every corner of the cabin. Lucan found himself smiling at each one. There were signs of something he never thought he'd have again. A home that wasn't empty. Even her mischief had a tenderness to it now. She still stole bites of his food, still hid his boots when she was playful. But each prank ended with her curling against him, purring into his chest as though apologizing with warmth instead of words. Their bond deepened in quiet moments. One evening, after a long day of hauling water and chopping wood, Lucan sank into his chair with a groan. Nara patted over, tail swaying, eyes glinting with sly intent. Tired? She teased, crouching beside him. Lucan smirked. You saying I'm getting old? Her ears perked mischievous. Maybe old human needs foxwife to keep strong. He raised a brow. Foxwife, huh? Her ears flicked pink, but she lifted her chin. Yes, I said it. Lucan chuckled, pulling her into his lap. She yelled, then purred as his arms wrapped around her. Then I guess I'm lucky to have one. She nestled closer, her tail curling tight around his waist, her golden eyes soft. Yes, lucky. Mine. At night, the quiet of the forest was no longer heavy. It was filled with their laughter, their voices, the sound of a fox girl's purr vibrating against the chest of the man she had chosen. Nara often whispered to him in those dark hours when the fire was low and the world seemed far away. You fed me, she murmured one night, claws lightly hooked in his shirt when no one else would. You let me stay? You let me belong. Lucan kissed her hair gently. Because you're worth it. Her ears twitched, tail swishing against his legs. Worth everything, she whispered back. And with her curled tight against him, her purr filling the cabin, Lucan knew she meant it. The days stretched into weeks, and the cabin felt more alive than it ever had. Nara no longer slipped in and out like a thief. She walked openly now, padding barefoot across the floor with her tail flicking lazily, ears perked toward every sound. Her scent clung to the walls. Her laughter filled the air, and her mischievous touches lingered on everything Lucan owned. The place was no longer just his shelter. It was theirs. One evening, Lucan came in from hauling firewood to find her crouched on the counter again. She had flour dusted across her nose, a bowl in her hands, and an expression far too smug for someone who had clearly caused chaos. Don't tell me you tried baking again, he said, setting down the logs. Nara grinned, golden eyes flashing. Baking? No, creating the creation. In the bowl was a lumpy mass of dough, more glue than bread. Her tail swished proudly. Anyway, Lucan sighed, leaning against the wall. You're going to kill us both. She sniffed the dough critically, then looked back at him with mock seriousness. If I die, you die. May promise. Lucan chuckled, shaking his head. That's the worst wedding vow I've ever heard. Na's ears perked, her smile softening. Not vow truth. She hopped down, panning across the room to press the sticky bowl into his hands. Taste. He eyed it suspiciously. You first. Her grin widened. Protector always tests first. Brave. Yes. Lucan smirked, breaking off a small piece and chewing with exaggerated thought. The texture was awful, but he forced a straight face. Not bad. Naren narrowed her eyes. Lie. Maybe a little, he admitted with a grin. Her laughter spilled out bright, and she pressed against him, purring. Good lie, my lot. Nights became their truest home. By the fire, Nara curled against him. Her tail coiled around his chest like a blanket. Sometimes she purred so loud it rattled his ribs. Sometimes she whispered mischievous teases until he groaned and pulled her closer. But sometimes, when the fire was low and her guard had fallen completely, she whispered the truth she carried deep inside. "Thought I was nothing," she murmured once, her breath warm against his skin. "Thought no one would want me." Half wild, too loud, too much. Lucan kissed the top of her head, his voice steady. "You're everything." Her ears trembled, and she pressed closer, her purr vibrating with raw, unguarded joy. "Mine forever." "Forever," he echoed. Even with the peace between them, the forest still whispered. Sometimes Lucan caught Nara sniffing the air, her ears twitching toward distant sounds. Sometimes faint howls echoed from far-off hills, but Nara no longer flinched, no longer packed to leave. Instead, she pressed herself tighter against him, tail curling around his waist like a claim. "They can howl," she said one night, her voice low and certain. "Let them. They will never take me." Lucan looked down at her, golden eyes reflecting the firelight. He smiled, kissing her softly. "Damn right." One morning, as sunlight poured into the cabin, Nara started awake, blinking sleepily. Lucan was already watching her, his hand resting gently on her tail where it lay sprawled across his chest. "What?" she muttered, ears twitching. "Just thinking," he said. She yawned, curling tighter against him. "Dangerous," he grinned. "Maybe, but worth it." Her eyes softened, mischievous and tender all at once. "Then think this. You never rid of me. Never." Lucan chuckled, pulling her closer until her purr vibrated against his chest. "Good. I don't want to." The cabin crackled with fire. The forest stretched vast and quiet outside, and within their walls the wild fox girl and the stubborn human lay tangled in each other's warmth. They had faced storms, outsiders, and her own bloodline. And through it all, they had chosen each other. The future might bring more howls, more trials, more shadows in the trees. But for now, there was only this. Her tail curled across him, her claws hooked gently into his shirt, her golden eyes soft as she whispered the word she had made her vow. "Protect her." Lucan kissed her hair, his voice steady as stone. "Always." And with her purr filling the cabin, the night stretched warm and endless around them. Nara called him protector, home, and mate, and nothing could take her away again. If you want more tales of love and survival, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.